welcome once again to this week's Fixing Football podcast. I'm your host Martin Naylor, and once again it's just me and Liam this week, and I won't bore you with any details. We spoke about a lot of things, including Wrexham, their rise to fame and stardom and how big they've become and what challenges lie in the wake for them. I won't spoil it any further, so we'll get straight into it, but before that I want to thank everyone who has been listening so far and who has been liking and sharing and doing all the good social media stuff that goes along with this sort of thing. We really appreciate it, and if you could continue to do so, continue to share with friends and family and whoever else likes to listen to stuff like this. It's much appreciated. You can find all our details at www.fixingfootballpodcast.com. We're at Fixing Football Podcast on most things except for Twitter, which is at Fixing Football, and I'm going to be quizzing Liam a little bit later, so let's get into it. Liam, how are we doing, mate?
Very well, Martin. How are you doing today? You okay?
All good. It's just us again, so we can keep it lively. There's plenty to talk about. I feel like we were the only podcast in the world who didn't mention VAR last week, and there's a couple more contentious decisions this weekend.
I would happily never talk about VAR, as you
Same.
know, but I'm sure we'll have to at some point.
At some point. I mean, it's getting ridiculous, but I think it's only right we start at what was being called the biggest game in the world this weekend, Arsenal v City, and of course we ran out 1-0 winners. What did you think of it? I mean, I'll give you my thoughts first, just a quick summary. I thought it was slow to watch. It was real tactical. Both teams really didn't want to lose. But yeah, you take it from here.
Yeah, it's a very good Arsenal performance and win, I thought. I did suggest to you prior to the game that I did think City were there to be taken with the injuries that they've got. And it wasn't just that sly dig that I'll do trying to pump you up and make you worry about the fixture. I did think that, particularly without Rodri for this game. They've obviously missing Kevin De Bruyne as well, and obviously a few others. And I did feel that the midfield would be quite lightweight for a big game like this. Now, I agree with you. I felt like it was quite a turgid game, quite tactical. I do think there were some bright moments, and I do think that Gabriel Jesus particularly was quite wasteful when getting in behind, particularly on the byline with a few cutbacks. And I felt that made the game seem like there weren't chances because he wasn't finding his man when they were quite actual big chances. But I think you were the better side, and I think you deserve to win. I mean, does that echo what you thought?
Yeah. I think we were the better side, only just overall. But I couldn't have complained with a 0-0 either. Yeah, you're right about Jesus. We're just a lot better when he's through the middle. I know we've got other injuries as well. Saka didn't make it, so we have to compensate that and get Jesus out there where he plays for Brazil. But he plays that role like a striker. He's very selfish, so he doesn't see them roles. He finds great space, and his first touch is brilliant. But we're so much better when he's through the middle. He can drift around. It gives people license to roam, and our team just works better. It's built for him at the moment. It's built for him to succeed in that position.
Yeah, I found it interesting how a lot of people talked about Ødegaard not getting in the game. And I think a lot of that is because his natural ball for Arsenal is to look up and look where Saka is.
Yeah.
And I think with Jesus' positioning, it kind of threw Ødegaard a little bit. So I think he struggled with that and struggled to get in the game as a result.
It's not just we struggled to get him on the ball in an attacking sense as well. Most attacks from an Arsenal point of view were sort of on the break, if anything, and we did all right. But usually Ødegaard will get it out to Saka and the team will drift out that way. If you ever look at a heat map of an Arsenal game, it's so swayed heavily towards the right-hand side with Martinelli just out on his own on the left because they know he can. It's a way of isolating the other team's right back then.
Yeah.
But I was so happy with the result. No one likes to see Pep succeed any more than he already has done. I think we've had our fill of that now. It was interesting that Rico Lewis, he played well in the week, but it was interesting that he's getting the nod consistently over Calvin Phillips now, regardless of being picked for the England squad.
It seemed quite an interesting position that he was playing as well. He seemed to be the more advanced midfielder of the three in this game. And He looked very good in that role. But
it's comfortable, yeah.
But I wondered what the thinking was to do that in this game when you've got Bernardo Silva then playing centre defensive midfield. Now, it may well be that he trusted Bernardo to receive the ball under pressure, and he was concerned that in a big game, Rico Lewis receiving the ball under pressure, even though he's impressed everyone, Rico Lewis, it's a lot to ask of an 18-year-old in a game like that, away from home, to be receiving the ball like that from your centre-backs. And that potentially was the thinking. But for me, if you're worried about that, I agree with you. You play Calvin Phillips.
Yeah. And there's a couple more points I wanted to make. There's obviously your favourite Raya versus Ramsdale debate. Raya had quite a shaky first half, and Gary Neville definitely picked up on that, made quite a point of it to point that out. And it could have been a real big moment in our season if two mistakes had gone the other way. We got away with it, and then he had a better second half. So that was my first point. I do expect to see Ramsdale again at some point soon, but we'll see. The next point was how quiet we kept Haaland. I think Saliba just had an absolute masterclass of a game. He picked out everything, and Gabriel was backing him up when he needed to. I thought them two, combined with Rice in front of him, was really, really good.
Yeah, I think City's formation allowed you to crowd Haaland, and particularly with the range of passing that was available in Man City's centre midfield, they didn't have that ball over the top, but you were defending quite deep to counter that anyway. So it almost negated a lot of the avenues for Haaland to essentially get the ball. And with the way that Pep wants his strikers to play, which is to never leave that position of being on the shoulder, it essentially means that they don't come into the game at all. And it's been a few games like that this year for Haaland. And I wonder whether teams have, without De Bruyne, who essentially is an exception to the rule and almost impossible to stop with those balls deep in the right side channel, I wonder whether teams have got a way of dealing with him to an extent. Now, obviously, you're never going to completely shut him down because he's just a generational talent.
Yeah.
But he might score 30% less goals because teams are kind of working out a way to defend against him. I'm not quite seeing how they're doing it, but it does look like that he is being crowded every single opportunity. But I need to see it a bit more in the flesh. But it's interesting. It's happened a few times now.
Yeah, that is crowding him out, and especially with De Bruyne out for quite a while. I think he's still going to be out until after the new year. I think City are on for a real bit of trouble, and will, especially when they come up against a Liverpool team. I'm not sure if they've played Spurs yet, but these teams are defending really well and will pick that out as a point that they make sure they do during the game. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to see when they get Rodri back, because he's a great defensive midfielder, but he also has a great pass on him as well and makes space for other people in front of him. So that might be another where they start to regain a bit of form.
Yeah, and it's obvious to say because of the amount of big goals that he scored, but Rodri's had goals to his game as well.
Yeah.
In the last 6 months or so, hasn't he? And he seems to be willing to take the ball on as well and drive forward, which is not something you naturally associate with, possession-based defensive midfielders of Pep or Arteta or of most teams that play that type of football. They generally stay rigid to be available for the ball, but Rodri seems to be taking the ball on. And I think that is a symptom of the De Bruyne injury and Pep looking for another way of breaking lines. I think that's why that's happening.
Would you still have City as favourites for the title?
Yeah. They've got the knowing, the confidence, the self-belief, the manager, the sense of inevitability that comes with that winning machine. So yes, I do. However, what I will say is I do believe that they are more vulnerable. And I think Gary Neville puts too much emphasis on this idea of winning fatigue and that they've won, because I think
4 in a row.
Yeah, but they've had quite a few new. It's quite a fresh new team. It's not the same treble-winning team. Certainly, Rico Lewis has proved. You've got Doku coming in. There's a lot of freshness to that team.
Kovacic and Nunez aren't Gundogan and whoever else they've replaced in there.
And you've got Vardiol as well. So there's a lot of new players. So I don't put too much weight in that. But what I do think is that they are missing some of the stars. So we've mentioned De Bruyne, but you picked up another one there that I think's vital, and that's Gundogan. Gone.
Yeah.
Mahrez, he could be a difference maker for them, particularly in games where the team was sitting back. He had the ability to shuffle in and get whip one round on his left foot in a way that not many players can do. So I do think they are missing a bit, but it's very hard to look past them. What I will say is that I think Arsenal are better than they were last season. I know they went on that ridiculous run to start last season off, and it almost feels like you haven't hit those levels, but that was unprecedented. I think you're better than you were this season. And I also think that Tottenham are better than they were this season. That's obvious to say. But I think there's more chance of teams taking points off City is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. We hope so. I hope so. I just hope that the title isn't... It didn't... I'd love it to go down to the last day or something. I wouldn't. I'd love it. I'd love for us to win it by a million miles. But I just want it to be competitive. That sense of inevitability that City had and still have. I just hope that dies off soon across the Premier League. Oh, in fact, I'm going to come back to the Arsenal game in a minute, but let's mention Scott and Luke. So we had two other winners in the group. Chelsea finally strung consecutive wins together for the first time against what looked like a really poor Burnley side, in all fairness. But they've struggled for points, and United from somehow managed to snatch a 2-1 win. What did you make of them two?
Well, I'll start with Chelsea. I didn't see it, if I'm being completely honest with you. Not seen much of it. But what I will say is it does seem like Pochettino's starting to find...
He's slowly getting through to him, isn't he?
Yeah. He's almost... I'm looking at the teams that are playing, and it's becoming more consistent with selection. So I think he's starting to trust players within that team a little bit more. I think with Nkunku coming back, where they've got a recognised forward, he's not quite a number 9 in the way that he plays, but he leads the line, and it'll take the pressure off Nicholas Jackson a little bit.
Well, in pre-season, he was playing just behind Jackson, and they looked great. I was really I wasn't excited is the wrong word, but I was really looking forward to seeing them two play together. It looked like they really struck something up, but obviously had a bad injury, and I still think they're looking at December time when he's due back. But
yeah, it's a bad one. I think for Chelsea, it's a great milestone, like you say, stringing consecutive wins together. They shouldn't worry about what's going on at the top of the league. I know that sounds patronising, but they need to really consider the fact that they're in a rebuilding phase.
Yeah.
And if they're improving week on week, if the message is getting through and they're starting to get consistent, if they stop leaking goals, then things are there. So I imagine Scott's pretty happy. Does that echo what you think? Or
yeah, it was... Burnley didn't look great at all. As soon as Chelsea they had a foothold in the game, it was done. It was 4-1. I can't even really remember Burnley's goal, but Sterling looked like he was on it. It seemed easy for Chelsea, which the great Chelsea sides that we're used to, that would have been the result anyway. It was just surprising to see this Chelsea side put that result together. Then I wanted to come on to United, and this is just for Luke's purpose while he's at home on daddy duties. McTominay with 2 90-plus minute goals. I mean, I know you're a fan of McTominay.
Yeah, I am. I think I was surprised at the Ten Hag's reluctance to use him. And because I do think...
to sell him.
Yeah, it seemed desperate to sell him. And then afterwards didn't want to use him, as almost it was like conceding that he was wrong when they were struggling in midfield. He brings a lot to the team, McTominay. He's dynamic, he's quick, he's strong in possession, he has an eye for goal, was a striker till he was 18, I believe.
Right.
So there's a lot of positives with him. He's obviously not a starting attacking midfielder for a top 4 side, but you don't need that every single game.
You don't need that in every squad player as well. Sometimes you do need a squad player, and you need someone who cares about what they're doing.
Bang on. He gives a shit. He really, really does. So I'm a big fan of his. And I won't say I was pleased to see United score, but if anyone was going to get 2, I was pleased it was McTominay, because I think he deserves that, because for me, whenever I listen to United fans, he gets nowhere near the recognition I think he would deserve if he was at another.
No, he's almost ridiculed, if anything. part of the joke piece. But they've got to win. It sort of alleviates some pressure that Ten Hag was starting to see come his way. So we'll see. Obviously,
on that,
they've
pretty much said today, haven't they? The sort of the managing group, if you will, of Man United, that they're backing Ten Hag.
So is that the kiss of death?
Well, no, I think the pressure is off now. I think I think the United fans were trying to ramp up the pressure as well by increasing the protest to the Glazers, which always seemed to happen off the back of a couple of defeats. They obviously won't come out and directly criticise Ten Hag, United fans, because he was their man.
Yeah.
So they're not like that, United fans. They're above criticising managers, yet these protests always happen when they're losing games. So I think, unfortunately, in the view of United fans, I think the pressure's off Ten Hag now.
We'll see. Before we move on to, we've got the international break coming up now, which is, I can't believe we're already at the second international break of the season. We've got Bolton didn't do so well, but there were 2 instances this weekend, and I just want to run it back with regards to like refereeing and VAR. We saw in the Arsenal City game the Kovacic incident, where I think it was a unanimous around everyone that Kovacic should have been sent off. Definitely for 2 yellow cards, if not for the straight red. The straight red's, personal opinion. For me, I think on commentary they described it as an orange card, like a yellow and a half, which is probably right. But to not pick up a second yellow when we saw that in the Liverpool-Spurs game last week, the absolute shit show that turned out to be, when Jota got his second yellow, which made less contact than Kovacic did on Rice. And then talking about consistency, the same thing happened in the Newcastle game with Bruno Guimaraes. He had just been booked and then went through again on another one, which was even more of a yellow card, and got away with it again. Is there an issue with consistency in the Premier League referees?
Well, there will be, because they're different people making the decisions. That there will be. And these types of decisions that we're talking about here, they are subjective, and unfortunately, to an extent, they will be guided by emotion. So, I didn't see the Guimaraes one, so I can't comment on that. But let's take the 2 examples.
It was very similar to the Kovacic one. It was like the fact that they were on the same day is mental.
Yeah, let's talk about the 2, the Jota one and the Kovacic one.
Yeah.
So, first off, they are both yellow cards. So, Jota was rightfully given a second yellow, and Kovacic should have been given a second yellow. In terms of VAR was correctly utilised, because VAR doesn't look at yellow cards. So, it's not under the umbrella of VAR to look at the inside and out of every single decision. Now, in terms of consistency, for me, they should have been both been yellows. I can see why Michael Oliver hasn't booked him, because the big game pressure of not making it.
Yeah, I can. I can also see that, yeah.
However, if you asked him, he'd say it wouldn't be that, because it's about applying law, it's not about managing the game. But I think if you'd shown it him after, it'd have been annoyed with himself, because it was definitely a yellow. So the consistency, I think, it's a very hard one to do, because you're never going to get that unless you turn it into AI refereeing. You're never going to get consistency.
Yeah.
You want to try and get the same decisions being given every week, but they should have both been yellows. I've got no issue with Jota's red card. His first yellow I thought was harsh, but when you're on the yellow, don't make that tackle.
Exactly.
And Kovacic,
same principle, and it was a worse connection as well, really, in the end of it. But you don't even make that tackle.
Yeah, exactly. I was on the fence about whether the first one was a red card, if I'm being completely honest. And VAR checked it and probably fell on the side of it's not quite that. It's not quite enough to overrule a referee for. Which I probably agree with that. I think if you'd have given it either way, I don't think there was. No,
I can perfectly accept that a yellow is given for the first one. Fair enough. That's it. To go and do the next one 5 minutes later.
It should have been. Unfortunately, it's not under the umbrella of VAR. I don't want it to be either, because too much is already, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
But Michael Oliver should have given that as a yellow. That's just.
Well, this is an interesting point, and we'll finish up with referees after this one, but. Did you see the interview with between Paul Merson? Well, it was the Gillette Soccer Saturday team, and Mike Dean was on there. I don't know if you saw any of that.
No, I was camping in Wales. That's why, if anyone's wondering why I'm not seeing anything, usually I do make a point of watching football before I try and talk about it. But please.
Well, they're obviously bringing up the stuff from the Liverpool game about what Darren England said, lack of communication, this and that. And one of the questions that was asked I think it was Clinton Morrison, was about basically using common sense rather than the laws of the game. And Mike Dean was very adamant that no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Preserve the the spirit of the game or whatever.
No, they're not there to manage a game. They're there to.
No, they just managed to apply the rules.
Apply law. That's what they're there for. Like you can't. And if that's what the argument was about, by the way, then Mike Dean's right, like 100% right.
Is he though? Yeah. I have a problem with.
Because you just asked 1 minute ago. Hang on. Okay. 1 minute ago, you just said you want more consistency.
Yeah, you're right.
If you start saying common sense, my version of common sense is very different to yours. We spend all our time arguing in our group. I don't think we've ever agreed on anything, right? So no, it's just it's like
yeah, fair point. But surely there is some logic to be had around refereeing these games, and to me it seems like the PGMOL, the Refereeing Association, have their objectives, their stance of things of what they're concentrating on. We've seen so many yellow cards already for time wasting, for dissent, but we're seeing so many more inconsistencies with stuff that you would consider the fundamentals of their job, the refereeing 101. We're seeing so many mistakes in that sense. Do you think that the referees are just concentrating on their newest objectives, their newest targets set, and almost forgetting and being super lax about some of the other stuff?
Not really. I think basically we spend all our time talking about referees.
Yeah, we spend way too much time.
That's not a new thing. That's been the same since well before VAR.
I think it's exaggerated though now. I think it's criminally overblown the way how much we seemingly have to talk about referees. They seem to be the main talking point of every game.
Yeah, because the managers do that. Because in life, it's easier to blame the thing that's out of your control, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
It sets the agenda, and then you're into like conspiracy theories. Like we're having to literally release audio because Liverpool are concerned about what's going on. They want to escalate it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, did you actually think that there's a conspiracy to stop Liverpool finishing in the top four? Like, why would that exist? Like,
that was a bit mental, and I don't want to go down too much down that route, but that was crazy.
But this is where we're going though, and unfortunately, it's like I've spent a whole weekend. I've got a rugby league loving father-in-law, and all he's talked to me about is how good video refereeing is in rugby, right? But there's fundamental differences, right? And before you start talking about start a game, the main difference is football actually matters. So the problem is, you could bring all the technology you want, and you'd still have fans of teams mapping out how many miles away the ref lives from that ground and whether they've ever been seen at that game. So you've got full-time social media weirdos now, and they're setting the agenda, unfortunately. And it doesn't matter whether you get rid of, or improve we are forever going to talk about referees now, because that's what your Jurgen Klopps of the world would rather talk about rather than them not being able to, keep Darwin Núñez misplacing the ball 4 times out of 10. But they'd rather talk about the thing they can't control.
Right. We'll park that there until there's a new conspiracy theory that we need to come out with against referees. I, like everyone else, I'm sick about hearing about them. What I do want to hear about is how Bolton got on, because at one point I checked and we were 1-0 up, and the next time I looked, it was 3-1 to Carlisle.
Dog shit refereeing decisions. We didn't turn up at the weekend. We started poorly and got worse from there. So Carlisle were every bit worth the win. We've got a real issue with our defence, because essentially we've got a situation where 2 of our 3 starting defenders are on long-term injuries, and the third one is just coming back from a long-term injury.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult, because when you play that 3 at the back with wing-backs, essentially a lot of your possession is based around that. So if these players aren't your first choice, they don't have that confidence in the chest to receive the ball, and it can really affect the full fundamentals of the formation and the system. And unfortunately, like, we're still a month and a half away from the transfer window opening, so
Yeah.
we're still going to come up against problems against teams that are effective in the press.
I asked you in our WhatsApp group, but I want to go back to it. To me, it looks like Bolton only seem to win when they play really well, and being one of them teams who is favourites, first or second favourite for the league, you need to learn how to win scrappy, and it looks like it is not something Bolton can do at the moment. They can't grind out a 1-0. They can win 1-0 playing really well, but they can't do it playing half-assed. They can't just nick it. Does that sound fair, or is that just what the League One is like, and
No,
teams are just very even?
It's fair. It's fair. I'd probably put it in a different light. So basically, we don't really have a plan B. Plan B really is to make changes to make plan A work better. That's kind of what I like. You're quite right. We do need to be playing well, and I think a lot of it comes down to confidence. So if we start the game on the front foot, get an early goal, and we're hitting our wing backs particularly are causing havoc, our centre midfielders are breaking line, then we can blow teams away. But if we don't get a grip of the game early doors, you're right, we struggle. And I worry that we might not do it now.
I might not take that opportunity. I wanted to ask about the owners of Bolton. I have first-hand experience of working with Bolton Wanderers, and you've been a lifetime supporter. We went through a terrible time with a certain Ken Anderson and the current owners, Sharon Britton and a group of people, is that right?
Yeah, Football Ventures Limited.
Football Ventures. And how would you summarise and review their current tenure? Is it, what are they, 3 years into a job there?
Yeah. I think there's pros and cons. I think they're generally well received by Bolton fans. I'm always sceptical of owners just because I don't like rich people, so I always look for faults in them. I don't believe anyone does things out of the kindness of the heart. So that's just my horrible negative nature. That's more a reflection on me than them.
But we're talking about money, sure.
But they've invested well. You know, they've invested in the infrastructure. The stadium looks miles better than it used to. Top end Championship, Premier League quality again, as it should be. You know, it's a beautiful ground. They've invested in the squad, I would say, with an element of caution. They've not overspent. They've been well within their means. And essentially, they've done very well to, I think, re-energise the place. They've refreshed it. It doesn't feel like...
They say a lot of the right thing, don't they?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the Bolton of the, I would say, the 2010s that was sort of languishing in the Championship and League One without really having any kind of identity. They've got an identity back. They've got a very good manager who they've backed in a number of different ways and essentially built the club around in his image. And in that side, it's good. I've got a few criticisms. I do think it's quite a closed operation. Don't hear a lot from them. And there's been a few incidences, I think, where they've come down pretty hard on fans' behaviour. Probably too harsh, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And for me as well, they tend to listen to quite what I would call the loud minority. So if people tend to make quite a lot of noise in social media, for example, they'll tend to pander to that. So, for example, doing things like, you know, away game season tickets, like essentially all you were getting is a small amount of fans that missed out on like a big game that got to every other game. And essentially just changing off the back of that because it's like, look what we did a little bit. So the good definitely outweighs the bad.
Well, that's good.
I'm a big fan of them, but I do wish they were a little bit more open. I think it's quite a close shot.
I'm glad you worded it like that because I wanted to ask you about another team whose owners are very open, arguably one of the most popular clubs in world football these days, and that's Wrexham. Little old Wrexham. I don't know if you've seen any of the documentary.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen... Yeah?
Yeah.
I've seen bits of it. I'm not going to pretend like I've sat and watched every minute of it, but I am quite interested in their story. Obviously, their owners are Hollywood superstars Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. They have their TV show, which is on Apple or FX. I'm not quite sure which one it is, but their story, they've just invested in it. What seems like they picked a name out of a hat and invested in a team in non-league football, because a soccer team was the next cool thing to have, and are taking Little Wrexham on quite a journey. What do you make of the Wrexham story so far? And is it something you would like for Bolton Wanderers? A superstar owner, should you say?
Oh, that's a big question. I'll focus on the positives for now, and we'll talk about what I think of the negatives of it later. But in terms of the positives, it's fantastic to see a community club get that kind of investment.
Yeah, I love it.
And they seem fully bought into it, particularly Rob McElhenney. They seem really invested. They've done a lot within the community of Wrexham. They've essentially poured life into all the community groups and the women's football team, and made concerted effort to really help the town of Wrexham, not just the football club, which they've invested in heavily from an infrastructure perspective, not just into the team, which we'll talk about, but also into the new stand and complex that comes with it.
Yeah.
A number of different ways in which they invested. And that's fantastic. Every club should want that. That's the one thing that I like about the state ownership in Man City and Newcastle. That the fact that they're investing in parts of the world where the UK government couldn't give two shits about. So I love about it. In terms of, I'll answer the question about Bolton, would I want it? Not really. We're at a level where I think we have a very healthy community fan base already.
There's more expectation on there would be a lot more expectation on them owners, say they came into a club like Bolton.
Yeah, I also wouldn't want the story to be about the owners rather than Bolton Wanderers themselves. I think with us, it's the name on the stadium that would be more important. I wouldn't want people coming here because they're in an X-Men film.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you're coming here, you're watching
one of
the oldest football clubs in the world and most famous football clubs in the world. So, no, I wouldn't want it for Bolton.
But I really like the fact that they've bought a team so low down in the leagues and created this story. Obviously, they've thrown their celebrity behind it, and that has increased their profile, just the fact of their names being attached to it. But we've seen celebrities be attached to other teams in the past. You look at Michael B. Jordan's a co-owner of Bournemouth, and Tom Brady's recently a co-owner of Birmingham.
Surprised you go Watford and Elton John. That's the classic example.
That's the big one. Yeah, you're right. But Elton John is I'm not saying Michael B. Jordan isn't a fan of AFC Bournemouth, but Elton John
that's fair.
is a fan and has almost bought it like a childhood dream type thing.
Ed Sheeran's quite
Ed Sheeran's tied in with Ipswich, yeah. We've seen this before, but we haven't seen a community attach themselves to a story in this way. And we're seeing a club really be built on a new image with extra funds coming in. Is there any? Do you not think people should be aiming further down the league pyramid to buy these football clubs to create this sort of story as well? If you was a wealthy celebrity,
well, not just celebrities. That is where the money is to be made in football. I think.
But there's people out there a lot richer than Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
But the fact that he has this star attached to his name has increased the profile tenfold, more than what he could put in terms of just figures.
I've got thoughts on that. We'll get into that in a minute. But in terms of should they talk about teams low in the pyramid? Yeah, absolutely. Like that is why they've gone for it, because of the potential. The potential is so high to essentially invest in a team like Wrexham, which I don't think they were quite picked out of a hat. I think between them and Notts County, you were looking at the teams with the highest fan bases in that National League.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Potentially, they may have looked, I think, at a couple of League Two clubs, but probably settled on Wrexham.
Yeah, price bracket. You never know. They might have only wanted to spend X amount of money, and you don't know what it's going to be.
This is it, and the idea is, I think they would have been reluctant to go National League at first, to be completely honest, because of the difficulty in getting promoted. But the idea of investing at that level is there. You've already mentioned probably, I think, the best example of this, which is Bournemouth. Obviously, the previous ownership of Bournemouth, can't remember the name off the top of my head, who bought the club as a League Two club, obviously built it around Eddie Howe, and essentially has sold it at a Premier League club price level. You've had similar with Brighton at the moment, where they have essentially grown off that. That is where the real money is in football, in terms of investing at that lower level. You'll still see investment at the Premier League at the moment because there's probably, from an American perspective, an idea of what the next TV deals could look like, and the subscription and all, where that could go, and maybe even Super League and more integration with European leagues. So you probably still will see more American investment in the Premier League, but yeah, absolutely. The bottom of the pyramid is where the potential is.
I really like about these two owners of Wrexham in particular is the way that they have bought into Wrexham's culture and the way that they've embedded themselves into the town and the culture of Wrexham and the people of Wales especially, as opposed to trying to Americanize it. I know they've got the TV show attached to it, but they could easily have gone all Vincent Tan on them and tried to change the colours and God knows what else they wanted to do. I think that's a big plus for them. It's something that they could have been on the back foot early on if they hadn't done that. Do you think that there is any challenges trying to balance this out with trying to push them up further up the leagues, where they're going to have to balance out sort of any, I don't know, cultural differences or whatever?
Maybe not so much cultural differences. I think there will be challenges, and this is where the danger sets in. So there's a few fundamental issues I have with this. Firstly, by its definition, it becomes unfair in the league because they're essentially able to attract sponsorship and investment on a level that other clubs just simply can't because of the profile of their owners doing stuff outside of the football club. And whilst it is fair enough in an extent of an open world and an open market, it is fundamentally unfair, and it creates a situation where a team can score 110 points in a season. Thank God Notts County were there, because otherwise that is a complete dead rubber. And I don't subscribe to the argument that they bring more eyes onto the National League now because no one's watching it now. I mean, Solihull Moors have won some like X amount of games in a row and nowhere. Not a story. Yeah, probably the first time we've heard about that.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah, exactly. So that's the issue with that. The biggest problem with this is, and I say this as a Bolton fan, what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if the success doesn't come? You're seeing Salford City at the moment in a bit of a challenging spot because they've essentially invested so much to the point where financial fair play is really harnessing what they can now do.
Yeah.
And essentially you've got
It's mad that a League One side has to deal with financial fair play implications.
Well, yeah, you've got a huge investment from, what's his name? Gary Neville's mate at Valencia.
I can't remember either.
Malaysian Airways he owns. I can't remember what his name is. So that investment in there into Salford, and it could be the same. And the problem is, if they do struggle, if the viewing figures on their documentary starts to wane, if the spiraling cost of building that stand become too much for even Hollywood money, what if they stop paying?
Yeah, these clubs become dependent on the next foreign owner.
Yeah, it starts being a thing. So this was Bolton's problem, because you quite rightfully brought up Ken Anderson in this, but Bolton's problems weren't caused by Ken Anderson. He was a horrible, slimy symptom of the problems. Bolton's problems were caused by Eddie Davis, essentially debt leveraging the whole club into a point where he essentially put 180 million into the club and didn't want to put any more in and wanted that money back. And yes, as he's right, and Bolton owe a huge amount to Eddie Davis for the best times. But that was the issue, that Bolton all of a sudden were out of the Premier League, not receiving that Premier League money, and had no realistic opportunity of returning to it. And he had no exit strategy. And the problem is when you leverage investment straight into it and you're running at this high end in terms of revenue coming in and being spent out in loads of different schemes, it can lead to the same thing. So that's my biggest concern about this model. And I think there is another example of it at Derby with Mel Morris. That was another similar situation.
Yeah, it was.
a fan with the best intention, and this is the issue. It's often not the fans it's often not the owners with the worst intentions. It's often the ones with the best intentions that see the biggest problems.
It's funny you mentioned about it being unfair, but isn't it only unfair until they reach a competitive level? I mean, there's only a couple of teams out there who've got unlimited money, and they're dictated by financial fair play. So, I mean, yes, it'll be unfair, but if an owner bought a Sunday League team just in the middle of nowhere and started to invest, they could climb up the leagues as well eventually.
Right.
A long way away. You'd eventually reach the level that you can get to.
You're probably right. Fairness is probably the wrong word. It's
undermining. It is unfair. Yeah, it is initially.
It's undermining of competitions. It's not unfair because it's their money and they can spend it as they want to. And they're rightfully bringing it in through sponsorships. I think TikTok sponsored last year, United Airlines. Yeah. United Airlines, but whatever, right? But fair enough. And it is rightfully there, but it creates a situation where it undermines the integrity of the league a little bit. But I suppose that's not their fault or problem.
No, I mean, I still do really like it. What have you made of the documentary and sort of the effect it's had on the club as a whole? And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the ending of last season. A lot of people were calling it scripted online. The fact that Ben Foster comes out of retirement and saves a penalty to see them go up as champions was pretty mad.
Yeah, I remember watching the year before, and I watched the game live with a Grimsby game, and the differences between that team and the team afterwards, they seemed to really invested in it. Like they were not letting this opportunity slip. So I think in terms of the documentary itself, I think it's pretty good. There's some things I like about it, some things that I don't. I think it's good that it shows what football clubs do for the communities, because a lot of those good things that they do aren't exclusive to Wrexham. You'll find pretty much every club up and down the country will do that. Obviously, the only thing with that is sometimes it can be a little bit unbecoming to show all the nice things, and I think they're a little bit quick to show the downtrodden side of Wrexham a little bit, which as someone's from a working class town, I wouldn't. It was
all doom and gloom until we turned up.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit like saviour complex, a little bit, and personally, I wouldn't like that if I was from Wrexham. But it makes good television, and that essentially will get them where they want to. And there's a little bit, I think, of unnecessary anti-English sentiment to it as well, which I care less for than other people, but it doesn't seem needed to me. I mean, maybe from the Welsh side of the border they do consider that more, but I'm not really that arsed. I see Wrexham, Cardiff, it's only part of the normal football pyramid. It makes, or Newport. Don't want to forget any Newport, but I don't give two shits about the fact that the Welsh, if I'm being completely honest. So there's a bit of that, but it's very good. It's a well-made documentary, which you'd expect with a caliber of
people the people who've got behind it, of course. Yeah. They are currently, I think they are 6th or 7th in the league at the moment.
I think when I had a look, they're in the playoffs.
Should they go on and get promoted again, what do you expect the next season of this documentary to look like? And I didn't want to forget, before we left Wrexham alone, the other tedious Wrexham/Bolton link, and that's Phil Parkinson, who's done a really good job.
Yeah, brilliant manager.
He really is.
Managed Bolton under the most stressful, most difficult of times, and essentially succeeded. There wasn't many dark days on the pitch with Bolton. They were the teams on the pitch. He got promoted with a team of players that
absolute rejects. That team.
You look at the team we've got now in the same division, and it's chalk and cheese the difference.
Yeah.
It's complete. It's a ridiculous what he achieved at Bolton, and I'm not surprised to see him being able to handle that, because I think it's particular promotion out of the National League was a huge pressure.
Yeah.
And he was the type of character they needed. Now, whether that was influenced by Sean Harvey, obviously knowing a bit about him, Sean Harvey was quite involved with the EFL when a lot of the issues were going on at Bolton, and probably had quite a lot of interactions with Phil Parkinson, I imagine, at that stage, and got a sense of his character at that point and being able to handle it. But when they went for Parky, even though he struggled at Sunderland, I thought Parky was the man for that job. God,
everyone struggles at Sunderland, though, don't
they?
Exactly. It's a nightmare. Yeah, so if Wrexham go up, which they can do, they can put a good set of wins together and end up second or something.
Well, there's 3 automatics in League Two.
Oh, there is, yeah, as well.
Yeah, it's 3 automatics and a playoff. So, I mean, to be fair, it's quite a difficult year to get promoted. They'll get promoted in the next 2 years, but you've got quite a few strong teams this year because you've got Notts County still doing very well. You've got Mansfield that have been there or thereabouts for a few years. Stockport didn't quite get over the line in their first year, and they're stronger this year. So you've got quite Forest Green. So you've got quite a few strong sides. So it won't be easy for them.
Salford in League Two or League One? Salford in League Two as well.
League Two, yeah. Bradford are there, but they've obviously just sacked Mark Hughes. They're not flying. But yeah, you'd expect them to be there or thereabouts, but it won't be straightforward. But next 2 years, you'd expect to see them get promoted.
I like to see it. I want to see the story. I want to see it keep going. I'll do some sort of binge catch up on all these seasons at some point. I think that's how I see them. They just decide. What is it? Is it on FX? It's just a team.
I think it is. I think it is FX created. It's available on. I feel like I'm promoting it. I've watched it on Disney. That's where I've seen it.
Oh, it's on Disney. Yeah, right. And if you use code Liam10, you can get 10% off. Is that right?
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, I think that's pretty much everything we've covered. It's been lovely to speak to you again, mate. I've got a little quiz for you though before we go.
Oh, go on.
Where can the people find us on Twitter/X?
Twitter/X is @FixingFootball. And just before we go, I did want to read some of our feedback that we've had recently.
Oh, go on.
Some of our fans from Aston Villa. So obviously, with Aston Villa spending a full season trying to qualify for the Europa League or /Europa Conference League, whichever one they're in, which I think it's Europa League.
No, they're in the Conference League. Because they were talking about Emery being able to win this in his sleep.
Well, yeah, of course, sorry. Which is maybe why they approached it with such arrogance of playing their B team in it. So I queried with a few Aston Villa fans as to why you would celebrate like you've won the league to qualify for this tournament when then you then play reserves in it. So we'll give some of the comments.
Let's review this.
First one is AVFC Tristan. So thanks for listening, AVFC Tristan, who says, leave it out.
That's someone who doesn't want to hear what you're saying at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. We've also got, who we got here? JAVFC. Why would we be happy with it? What, just rotating our team, considering our industries? No one's going to listen to your shite podcast. So, there we go.
Well, not no one, but we could do with a few more.
We've got J.AVFC, who also said, par for the course these days, if you know absolutely nothing about football, start a podcast. Unbelievable. So, thank you, Aston Villa fans. You can find us
to the list. We'll add Aston Villa fans to the list of hateful personal groups on Twitter, along with Luton.
Rude football fans.
I'm trying to think of. We're going to run out of teams by the end of the season if we crack on it this way. I hope Wrexham fans take this well.
Well, I think they will. I think we were relatively nice. It's not. I think so. I hope so. I feel like we were pretty fair. And it's not really their fault either. You know, even the negative stuff, they didn't buy it, did they? So it's not really their fault.
No, they're living through a golden period at the moment, and hopefully, I hope personally that we continue to see it. And
it'd be nice if it happened to everyone, I suppose.
We could get all the Avengers to get a team each. And
is he an Avenger? Is he an X-Men?
Oh well, Deadpool's in the middle, but let's leave that for another podcast.
Fair enough.
So hold on, that was question number 1 of the quiz. They can find us on Twitter/X @FixingFootball. What about our other social media handles? What is that?
This is the RSS feed that we're talking about here, isn't it?
No, this is your quiz.
Right, so you can find us at... I don't know.
Oh, right, hold on. No, that's fine. That's your answer. I will tell everyone.
Yes, I'm in charge of the Twitter. Actually, no, I'm not. That's Luke's in charge of the Twitter, not me. None of that's me.
An anonymous AI admin is in charge of our Twitter. So any hate you have directed at him/it. You can find all our social media at fixingfootballpodcast.com, where our handles are at fixingfootballpodcast, other than Twitter, because it's shorter, because you've got characters and stuff to juggle with. Right, last question. What should people do if they like this?
Like and subscribe.
There you go. Cheers, buddy. Catch you soon.
Bye, Ryan.